I worked here for about 15 years as a groundskeeper. I've always been interested in the history of Lopez, and because my family had so many ties around here, and I'm related to some of the people from two different directions. Most of the families here are interconnected. You go out here and look around the cemetery, and there's so many stories out there.
These are my grandparents, Cliff and Vera Mae Lowry. Cliff and Vera Mae were both from Tennessee. He was a butcher. There's even a record of him being a postmaster at one time. He did store clerking, deliveries. He boarded, so he didn't own property at the time. But eventually he did, and he ended up with a house that was built in 1908 down at Richardson. That Richardson community, that was a lot of the people that are standing out here. Their grandparents and great-grandparents were the contemporaries of Clifford and Vera Mae Lowry.
There was a contingent in Richardson that made a lot of the things in Richardson happen, and they were all good friends.
Yep.
And all their kids were good friends.
Vera Mae was a very, she had a loud voice, so when you were a small child and you were on the Jones Bay Beach, you could just about hear her calling to you from their house at Richardson.
Half a mile away.
Get back for lunchtime.
Over there's my great-grandpa, Jim McCauley. I remember him. See, the land kind of dictated who was going to settle.
That's right.
Because rocky soils are something that Irish people love.
That's right.
So this land right in here is just almost like a gravel. Yeah. They saw value in it. They pride themselves on those big rock piles that they take a stone boat and go out and pick rocks. See, the McCauleys were beyond. This 80 was Buchanan. He's the guy that built this church.
Oh, this church. Okay.
And then Jane McCauley was a Buchanan. That was Jim Buchanan's sister. And they had the 120 acres just adjacent, just across the Carragard Road. And at the end of Carragard Road was a Danish family, the Carragards, basically.
Yes.
And they also saw value in rocky soil. The Danes did, not the Dutch, but the Danes did. But most of this valley was of Irish extraction, Scotch-Irish extraction. But the thing about this particular viewpoint is you're basically looking at the Center Valley, the entire Center Valley.
Yes.
The Bartletts were there, the Upstons, the Cousins, the Burts, and they were all interrelated. Yeah. I mean, I can show you on a genealogy how I'm connected to most of those people. It's weird. It's weird.
I started researching when my grandmother was invited to enroll in the Alaska Native group.
Okay.
Because of her bloodline, and so my dad and I started going to every museum and historical society in Jefferson County, Whatcom County, King County, everywhere to look for records, and we found so many of his boat records that he built. It talks about how big they were and what they looked like. He built 3 schooners in Port Ludlow Bay, then moved to Marrowstone, where he and Mary Brown had their first 5 children. The youngest, when they came here by boat to settle over by Port Stanley, she was just 6 months old, and there were 5 little girls.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And were they fishing schooners, or were they?
No, he carried the mail and potatoes and apples from Tumwater to Victoria.
Are you talking about this guy?
Yeah, the Kilgards. Ruby is the descendant, but I'm with her.
Oh, okay.
But this is Kilgard. Kristen Jensen is the original immigrant connected to this group here.
All right.
And he homesteaded here.
Yeah.
And when he died, he had no family here. So he left the homestead to his niece and nephew.
Oh, had they come out?
Well, the nephew, Nielsen, was in North Dakota and had homesteaded there.
Oh, okay.
And then we have the paperwork where the lawyer out of Friday Harbor was writing to Denmark to Anna Nielsen,
business.
saying, hey, you've inherited this 80 acres, and we corresponded back and forth. And in 1913, shortly after that, they're on the ship, the SS United States from Copenhagen to Ellis Island. and they came through, and we believe they pretty sure they came by train from Ellis Island.
That
New
is
York.
a journey.
Yeah,
Well,
to
all the way
Seattle.
here?
Yeah.
And then got a boat, someone to bring them over here. And then they homestead at the Kilgore place with the blue roof of the barn. And 5 of the children are buried here.
Okay.
So Harold here is the one who died during the war. And then Otto, and then Anita here. And then this is the only child that died. She's about 7 months old, so
Yeah.
February to August, a little bit longer. What about that?
14,
Yeah.
yes.
14, and then Carl is the far one. But what the flags there, that's Anna and Neil's there. You know, she's the one who inherited the half. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other half went to the Jensen family, and they settled that, and it was the south part of the homestead.
When they moved to Lopez in '33, Ed and Ray, that was right after the Depression.
Yeah.
And there was a tax plot, and it went from Odland Park, where Odland Park ended, on the road, on the county road, east, and they bought all that property across clear to Port Stanley, including Upright Head. And I think it was $59 for the tax value. I think there's 180 acres there or something like that. And then Spencer bought from the other side of Port Stanley, all the way up, including all of Ellis Ranch and all of Spencer Spit.
Right.
And that was like $39. That Humphrey Head was a rock quarry. That rock mill ran for 5, 6, 7 years. So now Grandma Hughes, she'd cook all the lunches for the guys and take them down the wagon, and there was a whole crew of guys down there, 30, 40 guys working in the mine, at the rock mine. Hey, a lot of history around here.
There is, Marty.
A lot of history.
So,
good to
I don't
see
know.
you.
If you want a picture, that's a picture.
There's a character.
Louis Washburn. Louis Washburn came to the island in 1942 and from California, and he was a college professor down there at Cal Poly, and he wanted to become a dairy farmer. Dad found a farm for sale over here, 120 acres, and came up and looked at a working dairy farm, had everything he needed. He was just thankful for the island. Of course, he had made a lot of contributions, in a sense, to the island and to the people here. There's about 300 people here when I grew up. I was born and raised here. I was born in 45. And my mother, Catherine, had the honor of having the clinic named after her. She died in 71. The clinic opened up in 74. Our spaces are right next to theirs.
I am a 5th generation, maybe 6th, I always get it confused, descendant. My mom was born here, my grandfather, his father, and I guess then it gets to the 1860s when my great-great-grandmother emigrated here, and she was Weeks. And there's been Weeks here ever since. So, and this is my cousin who lived here and died very young, and my great-grandfather here, and my grandparents there, and mom's over there too. So a lot of Weekses here.
This started kind of as a joke. Phil liked to be the center of attention. He liked to talk, and people liked to talk to Phil. Skip Clark, who does the internment here, decided that we needed to be able to talk to Uncle Phil whenever we wanted to. So this pipe goes down to the casket, and you can talk to Uncle Phil right down there. If you're listening, Phil. He was a good guy. He loved to carry candy around for the kids, and really kind man. Nobody's ever heard him answer back yet, though.
That's actually my true grandpa, my blood grandpa, who was killed when he was 25 in a fishing accident. So his older brother married my grandma after Erlang's death. So I never knew that who I always considered my grandpa was not my actual grandpa until I was in my 20s or 30s.
In the old country, if one of the siblings passed, another sibling always took, stuck up for the family and married the widow and raised the children. And I think that carried over here. So the first generation is my grandfather and grandmother.
Jens and Sana.
Jens and Sana.
My great-grandfather and grandmother.
And then Herlang and Sveta, who we always called Herb. Paul, and then Aunt Regna. They were the second generation. I'm the third generation. He's fourth generation.
And there's more second generation over further down the hill.
Uncle Harold and Uncle Elmer, Aunt Harriet.
We're both part of.
They're all over there. But the cemetery ran out of room when they died, so they had to go over there.
How many children did Santa?
7.
7.
My dad was Pierre Franklin, and he came to Lopez because he had some family here. His sister lived here, and his mom and dad came later too, but that was right after World War II. And he bought the cousins' homestead. There was 2 of the cousins left, and they were both bachelors, and they came with the farm. So I remember Willie. I don't remember Jimmy. He died before I was born. But I remember Willie Cousins and my mom telling the story about Willie when my dad bought the property, built a cabin, and Willie and Jimmy lived in the house. And she would invite him over for dinner, but Willie was this old, that I remember, old decrepit guy, and he had fingernails that were about 3 inches long, and the first time that he used his fingernails for salad tongs was the last time he came to dinner at my mom's house. My dad farmed after that, and then he became a reef net fisherman. My grandfather was also a reef net fisherman, and then Dad started gill netting after that. He was a carpenter, so to live on Lopez you had to have, and that's still kind of the same way, more than one job. And he also worked for Bill McCauley in the slaughterhouse.
Samson Chadwick, he was a Canadian. He decided to come to the islands, and he met a guy named Keddy that had about 200 head of sheep over here. So he became a shepherd over here for him. Later bought Keddy out and then settled on Watma Head up there. Met my grandma, who was half native from Port Townsend. She was taking care of a lady on Long Island, and he brought his bride home in a canoe. Most beautiful woman he ever saw in his life, and they started their family, and they're pretty much all right here. The Chadwicks and the Humes, Luella and Dan and Kenneth was raised by my Aunt Addie and Adelia, because Minnie, the daughter, had passed away. So that's how the Humes and the Chadwicks come together, basically. That they lost their folks, and then the Chadwicks raised the Hume kids. They just had that little place. I don't know if you've ever seen it out there, just a little white house. And I remember one time, both my cousins and us showed up, 8 kids and 2 adults, and then the Chadwicks all in that little house. We're wall-to-wall kids, and it just tickled them to death to have children around, because they never had any children. Aunt Addie, she was an older woman at that time, and she'd take us out in the rowboat and row around that little rock out there, and we'd get it clear around it. We'd ask her to go around again, and she'd go around again. She would not say no to any of us kids. She was just a wonderful woman. Yeah.
It was a real quiet community until the 60s, 1960s, when it started to, we got found by the outside world, and people began to come back here and move in here. And fortunately, the people who are attracted to live here are the people who seem to be looking for the same kind of thing, the trust in each other and the cultural things. You can't retire and do nothing here. I mean, you're all of a sudden you're on 4 or 5 boards and doing all kinds of work for different people and community service and all that sort of stuff. So it's a great thing about it. A lot of people here working very hard for a lot of different things.